evidence.
Yes, in the realm of actual evidence, you're right. Is it possible, let's say, in your going over a lot of the stuff that you can pick up, do you purposely leave some of this out for fear?
Vast quantities.
Oh, you do? Okay. That's
many things I've forbidden myself. One thing I won't do is individuals.
Okay.
I did one once, reluctantly, started it.
Yep.
The individual was very wise and canceled it. And unfortunately, I had pre-knowledge by several weeks that his wife was to be assassinated.
Ooh. Ouch.
I won't do individuals. It's too painful a relationship, too much karmic burden.
But what you're saying, though, Cliff, is that even information on that level is available.
At some great cost. And an unknown... at some great price and an unknown cost. The price is that we have to pay to do that. It was like $3,900 to do that run just to get the data in.
Yeah.
For that particular part. And then there was the time and the interpretation, hours and hours and hours. So there was a price attached to it. And there's also a karmic cost.
Yeah, that's what I thought you meant.
And I won't pay that burden.
Yeah, I didn't know you meant the dollar cost. I thought you meant just what you're saying now is there is a karmic cost that, well, there's two ways of looking at it. If you come up with the information and you don't do anything to change it, then you have a karmic debt.
Correct. You've participated.
Yes. And
then you run into the walls. The individual may not believe you and may not alter their behavior, and the end result may be the same.
Except that you have done what you could do to change it, to bring about a more positive.
But then you've also built up within you an emotional wave of guilt and anxiety that perpetuates itself and continues.
Yeah. Damn.
So I'm at least, because I'm old, I'm somewhat wise about some of these things.
Yeah, you're old, right? Yeah. Don't tell me that.
I'm not talking age.
Oh, okay, all right. Just miles on the old carcass, huh?
There you go. There you go. Some people live 1 year very soft for 40 or 50 of them. Others of us have a tendency to indulge in things that are hard on the very nature of the individual.
That's
and
true.
So we live and become very old very rapidly.
Yeah. Been there, done that. I know. In the development, the genesis of your WebBot runs, have you seen, Cliff, the broadening of your understanding and your interpretation of the information that's picked up?
Certainly. I would have to be really hidebound not to have been altered by the process itself. And that's one thing is that I try not to do that. I'm always questioning my assumptions, and I teach myself, so therefore, you have to understand I'm not an educated man. Or I'm educated, I'm not schooled. I'm self-taught.
Yeah, okay. Which is probably very good because it doesn't place a lot of restrictions on your future.
You don't know where you're going to fail until you actually fail. You don't have anybody telling you, don't do that, you're going to fail. Yeah. So you go off and you may fail, but you learn some really interesting things.
Yeah, because you don't learn as much when you succeed.
I've never learned anything at all from success.
Right. It's only through failure. It's a tough way to look at it, but it sure is true, though.
Yeah, but once again, we come back to it. I'm not a soft and squishy fellow. As much as George may try and make me out that way, he's a great PR fellow.
Well, I read how he announced you being on the show tonight, and he called you a curmudgeon and a few other lovely words. But that's George. I mean, he's such a beautiful guy. In the development, Cliff, of this, the thing, if I understand what you said of how it all works, you yourself, or if you have a staff, but I think it's probably yourself, you create your own lexicon of the words that you are going to put down almost as a baseline, and then in running the WebBot runs, it's those words that you have chosen that are picked out. Is that right?
In a very broad sense, because we don't limit ourselves to just those words. They're the starting point.
Okay.
Prolog is a marvelous language because it allows you to write fuzzy logic into computer programs.
Okay. But then you can begin to pick up tendencies with other words outside of the ones that you have chosen?
In fact, we specifically look for words that are not in the lexicon, i.e. the arising of new language. And we also do specifically that. We look for words that are the whole point of our jumping off is to immediately grab something and use that as a springboard so that we're not deterministic, so that we're much more cyclical or free-flowing or random.
Wow.
So what we do actually is we have a list of the top 122,000 message boards. We've got a list of the top 44,000 chat boards, and mostly in English, say 65%. We've been adding other non-Roman language or non-Roman alphabet languages as we can, because that seems to be where much of the churn and the new spew is.
Yeah.
As these people come online and get all excited about the internet. Now English guys are somewhat blasé, and we're actually finding somewhat of a drop-off. So we're always looking for where as I say, the churn is. So we have this huge lexicon, and we go out and look for words, but our initial site list of 110,000, basically it says, go into these 110,000 sites. Find out, here's today our starting date. Find out what was posted yesterday. Sweep all of that, and sweep all the stuff that was posted today. Look for these words. Any links you find within any of these things, go off and follow them. Down to 256 levels. When you're all done, come back and go to the next one.
Yeah, right.
That's why it's so hugely tedious. We run the servers 24 hours a day just sucking in the websites.
How many machines do you need to do something like this?
I think there's like 9 or 10.
Oh, I thought there'd be more than that.
No, I've got a couple of multiprocessor machines that are really good. I've got an old Weiss box, which was modeled after a Sequent. It's got 4 processors, and can really move the stuff through it. It's like having a built-in router, because you can devote one of the processors, one of the CPUs, to actually handling all the routing.
Wow.
Sequent, by the way, are these huge near supercomputers that are built in Portland, I think, and they have up to 32 or 64 processors in them. This is sort of a company that was trying to get into the business, went bust, but for a while I dealt with them, so I have one of their servers.
Oh, pretty neat, huh?
Yeah, they're old Pentium 1s, I think.
Oh my gosh. Jeez. It's what I'm trying to, I guess, formulate in my own mind, Cliff, is that I understand that in your genesis of the whole concept since 1997, that you have now probably reached a level of competency and understanding that if you wanted to, you could begin to see what was going to happen in almost every aspect of human life, let's say in however far in advance you let the runs go. Was it 7 months or whatever?
That's determined by the emotional quality of the language. So we ran into a situation here this year where all of a sudden all the values started going short term, and we lost our long term view for a while. And it was because of what everybody was speaking and the words they were using. So to a certain extent, we don't control that. So in other words, at the time that the Sumatran earthquake, we happened to be doing a run as that was occurring. And we noticed within that, shortly thereafter, like January 2nd or 3rd, we were still in data gathering mode, I think. And we noticed a couple of blips come in, and all of the language suddenly went immediate. We lost much in the way of long-term discussions and their emotional content, and everything was focused on the here and now. And for a brief period of time, we had that in a couple of runs this year. So the fact that we're able to get 6 months or 7 months or whatever is really a function of the language that is used that we bring back. It's not like I can say, let's look out 6 years.
Yeah. Although you could see tendencies, couldn't you?
Correct, and we have done so just for this discussion.
In the last couple of years, can you share with us some of the potential, and I'll always say potential major events that might be coming our way? Let's say within the next however long you can go out.
Let's look at it on an annual basis, and something that happened in 2004, we kept coming up with all of the bad water references.
Okay.
This year, we keep coming up with plate shift.
Oh.
Doesn't sound too good to me.
Oh.
We also see... I'm sorry?
I said, okay, that makes sense to me.
Because we're talking, tectonic plate,
Yeah,
not plates
sure.
in our kitchen.
No, well, in a roundabout way, but yes, I do understand what you mean. So, and I know what happened when you had the water aspect of it, but now you have the plates.
Correct.
And that has got to mean something fairly major.
Well, yes, but again, let's get back to interpretation.
Okay.
Because we have to be real clear about this, because in the actual Sumatra earthquake, the Indo-Australian plate fractured into two. One of them, shockingly, reversed its direction, where the old Indo-Australian plate was headed in a vaguely east direction.
Yep.
One half of it is now headed west. And I have to postulate a plate shift anywhere on the planet is a plate shift everywhere.
Oh, sure it is, yeah.
Okay, but it is true that the language now seems to indicate that there's a plate shift coming, such that there will be an emotional release attached to it. It's also true that our earlier projections are showing that we're going to have two cities somehow involved in a disaster. Well, plate shift would seem to qualify.
I would say so, yeah.
With the internet, of course, it's entirely composed of numbers. You find numbers in every single web page you ever go to. So we have a tendency to just throw all those away.
Okay.
So when numbers show up in our data, we take it fairly seriously because they're numbers with emotional associations. Usually we get things like many, most, that kind of thing, as opposed to actual numbers. When we got the 300,000 last year, I stuck it in because it was unusual.
Yeah.
And indeed, now seems to be the number everybody's more or less hovering around in terms of the number of people that were directly affected. Now we're getting something saying 13 million.
Aha. Interesting.
And we're seeing vast quantities of descriptive words that would suggest that two cities, one mountainous, one seacoast, are going to get in some serious world of hurt.
Okay,
to the point where people will have to evacuate, and the roads are filled with all kinds of people trooping their way away because things are so badly upset, if you will, that vehicular transportation is just a non-issue.
Now,
it just isn't going to happen.
In your reading and interpretation, you have not come up with any locale.
Currently, and see, there's where we start pandering to fear. Okay. If I name a place, then people that might live in that place might actually assume I know what the hell I'm talking about and do something, and that may not be the place at all.
Well, that's possible. Yeah.
So you see my problem, right? I don't know. I have no clear indication. The best we've got now seems to suggest that there's some kind of something going on in the general area of the Caribbean.
Interesting.
And that's
because
the best we can do. It may be more Atlantic. It may be an Atlantic plate shift.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the Caribbean plate has been very, very active. We have volcanoes down there, very, very active. And
we also, by the way, have seen lots of rising land in our data, and then, of course, and it was easterly associated with China, and now we've seen new volcanoes pop up near Iwo Jima, so we're going to have rising land popping up there. And that was about a year ahead of time.
Wow.
I think that'll end up being more significant than any of us can imagine. Now, to a certain extent, let's get way back to our discussion here a few minutes ago of the economic stuff and just tidy that up a bit.
Yeah.
Silver, gold, precious metals, all that kind of stuff are starting to take on a life of their own separate from the markets. The markets in our entities are showing up more and more cross-linked over into the political powers, clear indications of their manipulation at the paper debt level. It does not bode well. The whatever that's going to hit in December has a huge emotive context relating to economics, and it relates to currency, how people live, food. We've seen lots of restrictions of food supplies.
Okay.
So whatever occurs in December, whether it's a global economic collapse or some other kind of an event, there will nonetheless be a global economic ripple from it that will take months to even work out. And that pretty much is a long-term, or rather a short-term economic output. Now, when we do a long-term run here, we see that by still under the influence of the militancy overall metadata and the